All right, so I want to do a commentary to Goethe's 1785 fairy tale, the fairy tale of the green serpent or green snake and beautiful lily, depending on how it's translated. Now, this is Goethe's response to his reading of the Chemical Wedding of Christian Rosenkreuz, which is the foundational text for Rosicrucianism. And so this story should be regarded as in the Rosicrucian tradition, because Goethe explicitly meant it to be so. And this is not a fairy tale for children. This is a fairy tale for initiates. It is very complex, very dense, and very wonderful. So what I want to do here is read through it and give a little commentary using the images here of the anthroposophic artist David Newblatt. He's done a wonderful series of illustrations here. Okay, so let's dive in here. Weary from the exertions of the day, the old ferryman lay asleep in his little hut on the banks of the great river, which was swollen from a heavy rain and had overflowed its banks. In the middle of the night he was awakened by loud voices. He could hear that they belonged to travelers who wanted to be put across. And here is, in this first image of him, these are will-o'-the-wisps that are the travelers, and the ferryman, they're in gold, and the ferryman is in violet there. The river is in between them, so he's ferrying them to the other side, where you can already see there's a vaguely serpentine outline right there. He went outside and could see two will-o'-the-wisps hovering over his moored boat. They explained that they were in a great hurry to get to the other side. The old man wasted no time, but pushed off and crossed the stream with his customary skill. Meanwhile, the two strangers hissed at each other in a strange language that he could not understand. Every now and then they laughed loudly. All the time they were jumping back and forth from the edge of the boat to the seats. "You're rocking the boat," the old man cried. "If you go on jumping around like that, it'll tip over. Sit down, little lights." They burst into loud, rude laughter at the very thought of such a thing. They jeered at the old man and were wilder than ever. He bore their bad behavior with patience, and soon they had reached the other side. "This is for your trouble." And then so this is him ferrying them. And then let's see, the next image, it shows them, the two will-o'-the-wisps over here. They shake their bodies, and gold coins come out of their bodies. But that's not the correct payment, as he says here. "This is for your trouble," his passengers cried, shaking themselves, whereupon many shining pieces of gold fell into the dank boat. "For heaven's sake, what are you doing?" cried the old man. "You will bring disaster upon me. If one of the gold pieces had fallen into the water, it would have reared up and swallowed me and my boat. You too, perhaps, for it cannot abide metal. Take your gold back." "We can never take back anything we have shaken off," said the will-o'-the-wisps. "So you're going to leave me with the nuisance of picking it up, carrying it on land, and burying it," the old man said, stooping and gathering the gold pieces into his cap. Meanwhile, the will-o'-the-wisps leaped out of the boat, and the old man called out to them, "What about my fare?" "He who takes no money must work for naught," they cried. "But didn't you know that I get paid only with the fruits of the earth?" "Fruits of the earth? We despise them and have never partaken of any." "Still, I can't let you go until you have promised to give me 3 cabbages, 3 artichokes, and 3 onions. So what's happening here is that this is an allegory of the descent of the soul onto the material plane. The will-o'-the-wisps represent souls from the other world, incarnating down on the physical plane. So the river divides the world of the beautiful lily, which they have just come from, and somehow do not know that she is there, but that's her world, the other side that they have just come from. That's the world of the spirit, the other world. Now these are souls ferried to the world of materiality, so they're incarnating. And it even mentions right here how dense this side of the bank feels, because it's materiality. The will-o'-the-wisps would have liked to trick the old man by stealing away, but they felt quite incomprehensibly attached to the ground, and it was the most unpleasant experience they had ever had. Souls do sometimes find it difficult to adjust to their bodies on the physical plane. They promised to fulfill his demand as soon as they could. He let them go and pushed his boat off. He was already quite far away when they shouted to him, "Old man! Listen, old man! We have forgotten the most important thing of all." But he was too far away and couldn't hear them. He let the boat drift downriver along shore, intending to bury the dangerous gold in a mountainous region that the water could never reach. When he got there, he spilled it into a great crevasse between high rocks. Then he rowed back to his hut. So if the gold comes in contact with the river, and the river is kind of a symbol for the astral body, the passions and desires of the animal nature of the astral body, and it rejects gold because gold is wisdom of the spirit, and the astral body initially, in the early phases of the spiritual process, will reject it. So he has to go find a place to bury them where the river won't be able to get at them. So here he is burying the gold, and he throws it in this little cave over here where a green serpent happens to live. So the serpent is always a symbol for the material world. So this is confirmation that the world of the green snake is the world of matter. The world of the beautiful lily, which is an old alchemical symbol for purity, is the realm of the spirit. And now she's got all these gold pieces. A beautiful green serpent lived in the crevasse, and the sound of coins clinking awoke her. One look at the tiny discs, and she began to swallow them greedily. She even picked up all the pieces that had fallen among the bushes and into the cracks. As soon as she had swallowed them, she could feel them melting inside her. It was a very pleasant sensation. They spread through her entire body, and to her delight she could see that she had become transparent and glowing. What's happening here is that now Goethe didn't know anything about Kundalini Yoga yet, but it doesn't matter because it's a universal system that is actually true in reality. The chakras exist on the body's subtle energetic plane, not its physical plane. You're not going to find them on the operating table, but they're there nonetheless, and I myself have seen them. So this is the awakening of the serpent at the bottom of the cave, which is the root chakra at the base of the spine. It is now being activated, and it's going to ascend through the chakras. So that's what's happening here. This is the serpent in the cave with the Muladhara going up the Sushumna, the central spinal canal, with the two nadis on either side of it. Ida, or Pingala and Ida. Pingala is solar, Ida is lunar, and they twine around each other like a caduceus. She had been promised a long time ago that she would one day look like this. Now she began to wonder if the illumination would last. Thus, curiosity and assurance for the future drove her out of the rocks to find out who could have scattered all this beautiful gold. She found no one, but she did find it very pleasant to admire herself slithering between grass and bushes in the lovely light she shed on the fresh green. Every leaf was an emerald, every blossom magnificently glorified. She roamed the lonely wilderness in vain, but her hopes rose when she came out into the open and far off could see a glow that equaled hers. So then she catches up with the two will-o'-the-wisps here. So I shall find my peers, she cried, and turned in that direction, paying no heed to the difficulties she encountered as she crawled through swamp and reeds. For although she preferred living in dry mountain meadows and deep crevices and was accustomed to quenching her thirst with fresh spring water, she was ready to undertake anything for the sake of the gold and the beautiful light. These are self-luminous creatures, and according to Indian mythology, the forms of the physical world are made of stula, solid matter, which changes shape very slowly and is illuminated externally by either the sun or fire. The forms of dream and myth, on the other hand, are self-luminous. They are bioluminescent. They radiate their own internal light. These are myth forms here. When she at last reached the soggy marsh where the will-o'-the-wisps were gambolling, she was very weary, but she rushed up to them, greeted them, and was pleased to find herself related to two such pleasant gentlemen. The will-o'-the-wisps brushed against her, hopped over her, and laughed. "Well, dear coz," they said, "even if you are only from the horizontal line of our family, it doesn't really matter. Of course, you realize that we are related to one another only because we glow, because look!" And they turned themselves into flames by making themselves as long and pointed as possible. "See how well this narrow shape suits us, gentlemen of the vertical lineage? Don't take offense, good friend, but show me another family that can boast the like. Never since the will-o'-the-wisps were created has one of them sat down or reclined." The serpent began to feel very uncomfortable in the presence of these relatives because, however hard she tried to lift her head, she knew only too well that she would have to put it down on the ground again before she could move away. A little while ago, in her dark glade, she had been very pleased with herself, but here in the presence of these cousins, she seemed to be glowing less and less by the minute. In fact, she began to fear that she might go out altogether. It was therefore in a state of embarrassment that she hurriedly asked the gentlemen whether they could give her any information as to where the gold had come from that had tumbled into her crevasse a while ago. She thought it might be a rain of gold straight from heaven. The will-o'-the-wisps laughed and shook themselves. A huge amount of gold coins fell from them, and the serpent slid forward quickly to swallow them. Enjoy them, cuz," said the fine gentleman. "We can let you have plenty more." And they shook themselves several times with great agility. The snake could scarcely swallow fast enough. Her light grew visibly stronger. Now she was really glowing beautifully. The will-o'-the-wisp, however, had grown quite thin and small, yet without losing any of their good humor. "I shall be forever grateful," said the serpent, when she had caught her breath. "Ask of me what you will. I will do anything within my power for you." "Very fine," cried the will-o'-the-wisps. "So tell us, where does the beautiful lily live?" "Lead us as quickly as you can to the palace and garden of the beautiful lily. We are dying with impatience to dance at her feet And so this is the soul. Once it is incarnate in the physical body, it has forgotten its origins with amnesia, which is necessary for the performance of our karmic tasks on the physical plane. We're not supposed to remember our past lives. So they've forgotten that the beautiful lily lies on the other bank, which is the side from where they just came when they incarnated into physical actuality. The serpent sighed, "I cannot do this service right away." She said, "The beautiful lily lives on the other side of the river." "On the other side of the river? And we had ourselves ferried across on this stormy night. Oh, what a cruel stream it is that separates us. Do you think we could call the old man back?" "Well, you wouldn't gain anything by it," said the serpent, "for even if you were to meet him on this side, he wouldn't take you across. He can bring anyone to this shore, but take no one to the other side. Incarnation is a one-way journey until you die, in other words." "Well, then we've really done it. Is there no other way of getting across the water?" "There are a few, only not right now. I can put the gentleman across, but not until noon. And that's a time when we don't like to travel, because they're will-o'-the-wisps. They can only be seen at night, because they're myth forms. The daylight scares them away." "Well, then you'll have to cross in the evening on the shadow of the giant." "And how do we go about that?" "Well, the giant, who doesn't live far from here, can do nothing with his great body. His hands can't lift a piece of straw. His shoulders can't bear a bundle of faggots. But his shadow can do a great deal, in fact, everything. That is why he is most powerful when the sun rises and sets. All one has to do is sit down on the neck of his shadow at nightfall. Then he walks gently toward the shore, and his shadow brings the traveler across the water. If you want to meet me at noon in that wooded corner over there where the shrubbery grows close to the water, I can put you across and introduce you to the beautiful lily. But if you don't like the heat of the noon, all you have to do is seek out the giant toward evening in yonder rocky bay. I am sure he will be pleased to help you." With a little bow, the young gentleman left, and the serpent was quite glad to get away from them, partly because she wanted to admire her own light, partly to satisfy a curiosity that had been plaguing her strangely for some time. So this giant that we'll see in a bit is kind of helpless on his own, but in the end of the story, he'll be transformed into a giant sundial. So he represents technology, the Ahrimanic world, as Steiner would call it, of technology. He can ferry people across the river, but only with certain very severe, strict, narrow limitations. She had made a most peculiar discovery in the rocky crevasses through which she often crept, for although until now she had had to crawl through these depths without a light, she could tell different objects apart very well by feeling them. She was accustomed to finding herself surrounded by only the irregular products of nature. Sometimes she slithered past the sharp points of huge crystals, or she could feel the jags and flaws of pure silver. Sometimes she brought a gem out with her to the light. But to her great astonishment, she had recently stumbled upon some objects in a hollowed-out cave that betrayed the fact that the hand of man had formed them. There were smooth walls that she could not scale, sharp, regular edges, beautifully shaped columns, and what seemed strangest of all, human figures. She had wound herself around them several times and come to the conclusion that they were made of metal or highly polished marble. Now she wanted to experience all these things with her eyes and corroborate what until now she had been able only to surmise. Now she thought she could illuminate this marvelous subterranean cavern with her own light and hoped to see all these strange objects at once. She hurried off, and on the customary path found the fissure in the rock through which she usually crept into the sacred precincts. And so she's discovered an underground cave that has 4 kings in it that are made of, they're taken from, I believe, Daniel's vision, the 4 kings. There's a golden king, a silver king, a bronze king, and a 4th king who is a sort of weak alloy of all 3 metals. And of course, this is derived from Hesiod's 4 world ages, the golden age, and then that's followed by the silver age, and there's a gradual diminution of virtue in each age, the bronze age, and then finally the iron age is the age of us brutes, who can only think of solving our problems with violence. The planet's getting a little sick of that. When she arrived at the place, she looked around her curiously, and although her light could not illuminate everything in the rotunda, still she could see what was near her clearly enough. With amazement and awe, she looked up into a shining niche that held the statue of a noble king in pure gold. And here we see the gold king over here. It seemed to be more than life-size, yet it was shaped like the figure of a slight rather than a big man. He was wearing a simple cloak and a wreath of oak leaves on his hair. Remember the wreath of oak leaves on his hair. The serpent had scarcely taken in this awesome sight when the king addressed her. "Where have you come from?" he asked. "Out of the cleft in the rock where the gold lives," said the serpent. "What is more glorious than gold?" asked the king. "Light," replied the serpent. "What is more refreshing than light?" asked the king. "Conversation," replied the serpent. As they talked, the serpent caught sight out of the corner of one eye of another magnificent statue in the next niche. A silver king sat in it. Here's the silver king, sat in it. And he was ornately clad. Crown, belt, and scepter were studded with jewels. The serenity of pride was on his face, and he seemed about to speak when a vein that ran darkly across the marble wall suddenly turned light and spread a pleasant glow through the whole temple. And so in comes this mysterious man with a lantern over here. He actually represents the light of reason. His lantern has the power, as long as there is no other light source, to transform the walls of stone into gold, which is what the intellect can do within certain limitations. It can find the gold, like the sciences find the gold in the world, all the beautiful formulae that make things happen and so forth. And it also has the power of transforming wood into silver, and it also has the third power of transforming dead animals into jewels. All of those will be important. There's not one single extraneous detail in Goethe's story. Every detail counts. That's why I'm reading through it instead of synopsizing it. He sat there leaning on his club. Let's see, where did the guy go? The serenity of pride was on his face, and he seemed about to speak when a vein that ran darkly across the marble wall suddenly turned light and spread a pleasant glow through the whole temple. In it, the serpent could see a third king, cast mightily in bronze. He sat there leaning on his club. He, too, wore a wreath of oak leaves and looked more like a rock than a man. The serpent was about to look at a fourth king who was farthest away when the wall opened and the shining vein disappeared like lightning, and the serpent's attention was now drawn to a man of medium height emerging from the aperture. He was dressed like a peasant and carried a small lamp in his hand. It burned with a quiet flame that was lovely to look into, and it illuminated the whole dome in a wonderful fashion without casting a single shadow. And of course, those of you who know the tarot cards, especially the Weight Deck tarot card, this is the 9th card of the major arcana, the Hermit. He's holding the lamp in exactly the same position, who symbolizes the attainment of wisdom. "Why have you come?" asked the Golden King. "You can see that we have light, and you know that I am not permitted to illuminate darkness." "Is my kingdom coming to an end?" asked the Silver King. "Late or never," the old man replied. The Bronze King asked in a loud voice, "When shall I arise?" "Soon," said the old man. "And with whom shall I ally myself?" asked the king. "With your older brother," said the old man. "And what is to become of the youngest?" asked the king. "He shall sit down," said the old man. "But I am not tired," the fourth king cried in a hoarse, stammering voice. He represents the degeneracy of the fourth age, the Kali Yuga or the Iron Age, and so forth. While everyone else in the temple had been talking, the serpent had been creeping around admiring everything, and now she took a closer look at the fourth king. He was standing, leaning against a column, and his prominent figure was ponderous rather than beautiful. It was not easy to tell in what metal he had been cast. On looking closer, it seemed to be a mixture of the three that composed his brothers, but in the casting the metals had evidently not amalgamated properly. Gold and silver veins ran irregularly through bronze, making him a very unpleasant sight. Meanwhile, the Gold King said to the old man, "How many mysteries do you know?" "3," said the old man. "Which is the most important?" asked the Silver King. "The manifest one," said the old man. "Won't you reveal it to us?" asked the Bronze King. "As soon as I know the fourth," said the old man. "It's no concern of mine," mumbled the Composite King. "I know the fourth," said the serpent, creeping up to the old man and whispering something in his ear. Whereupon he cried in a mighty voice, "The time is at hand!" She's given him the secret of the whole story. She's in possession of the secret, the Kundalini serpent. And now here he is returning home to his old woman, wife. The temple echoed his words. The metal statues rang with them. The old man vanished toward the west, the snake toward the east, and both hurried as fast as they could through clefts in the rocks. The walls of every passage traversed by the old man turned to gold behind him, because his lamp had the miraculous power of transforming all stone into gold, all wood into silver, and all dead animals into jewels, and of destroying all metal. But to do all this, it had to shine alone. If another light shone with it, the lamp cast only a lovely glow, and all living things were refreshed by it. The old man went into his hut, which was built up against the mountain. He found his wife despondent. She was sitting by the fire weeping, and he could not console her. "How miserable I am," she cried. "If only I had not let you go out today." "What has happened?" the old man asked calmly. "You had just left," she said, sobbing, "when two blustering travelers came to the door." These, of course, are the will-o'-the-wisps. "I was incautious enough to let them in. They seemed to be nice, decent people. They were dressed in bright flames. You could have taken them for will-o'-the-wisps. They barely got into the house when they began to pay me the most shameless compliments, and in the end became so impertinent that I am ashamed to even think of it." So they came in, and they were coming on to her. Her husband smiled and said, "I think the gentlemen were only joking, but they really should have been satisfied to remain conventionally polite in consideration of your age." "My age?" cried his wife. "Why do I have to listen to my age all the time? How old am I, anyway? Conventional politeness. I know what I know. And just have a look around. Look at the walls. Can you see the old stones that we haven't seen for 100 years? They licked off every bit of gold, and how spryly, and kept assuring me it tasted much better than ordinary gold. And when they had cleaned up the walls, they seemed to be in high spirits, and why not? They had certainly grown taller, broader, and shinier in a very short time. So they like to eat gold and then excrete gold. So gold is their food. But then they began to be bold again and brushed against me and called me their queen and shook themselves, and a heap of gold coins fell from them and danced all over the place. Look at them shining there under the bench, and what a disaster. Our little pug dog ate some. There he lies by the chimney dead. And so whereas the serpent can eat the gold coins, when the dog, their little pug dog pet, tries to eat the gold, it kills him. The poor thing, I can't get over it. I didn't notice it until they had gone, or I would never have promised to pay their debt to the ferryman. "What do you owe him?" asked the old man. 3 cabbages, 3 artichokes, and 3 onions, said his wife. "I promise to carry them down to the river as soon as it is light." "Do them the favor," said the old man, "because they will serve us again some day." "I don't know about that, but they certainly assured and promised me they would." In the meantime, the fire in the stove had gone out. The old man spread ashes on the coals and removed the glittering pieces of gold. So now he's put out the fire on the hearth so that he can transform their walls. Part of their walls is cave wall, and he can turn it back into gold then, as long as there's no other light. Now his little lamp shone by itself again, the walls were covered with gold once more, and the little pug dog had been transformed into the most beautiful onyx imaginable. The changeable black and brown of the costly stone made a rare work of art of him. Now I looked up the symbolism of an onyx, and it is said to bring bad luck. So that's interesting that Goethe chooses to have the dog. It's not a good omen, in other words. "Take your basket," said the old man, "and put the onyx in it. Then take 3 cabbages, 3 artichokes, and 3 onions. Place them around the onyx and carry all of it down to the river. Let the serpent put you across at noon and visit the beautiful lily. Give her the onyx. She will bring the dog to life by touching him, just as she kills all living things in the same way." So the problem with the beautiful lily is that anything that's alive that she touches, she will either kill, or in this case, her lover, the prince, she has sort of put him into a zombie state, killing his spirit, in other words. But with animals, she'll kill animals. But then if it's already turned into stone, like a jewel of some kind, then she can touch it and resurrect it in its animal form. She will bring the dog to life by touching him, just as she kills all living things in the same way. The dog will make her a faithful companion. Tell her not to grieve. Her deliverance is nigh. She can look upon the greatest misfortune as good fortune, for the time is at hand. So then, there's the giant. So the old woman packed her basket and started out with the dawning day. The rising sun shone brightly on the river, glittering in the distance. She walked slowly because the basket was heavy on her head, yet it was not the onyx that weighed her down. Whatever dead matter she happened to be carrying never burdened her, because then the basket rose and hovered just over her head. So there she is. You can very, very vaguely make her out with the basket that magically hovers above her head as she walks, that contains the food to pay the ferryman's, to pay the will-o'-the-wisp's debt to the ferryman. Whatever dead matter she happened to be carrying never burdened her, because then the basket rose and hovered just over her head. But she found carrying fresh vegetables or a small living animal extremely onerous. She had been walking for some time in a dour mood when she suddenly came to a stop, startled. She had almost stepped on the giant's shadow, which stretched out across the ground to where she was walking. So the sun is rising. So he's active only at sunrise or sunset. He represents a kind of twilight state of consciousness, the in-between states of consciousness, such as dream and reverie and so forth. She had almost stepped on the giant's shadow. Okay. Only then did she see the powerful fellow bathing in the river. He left the water, and she didn't know how to get out of his way. As soon as he saw her, he greeted her cheerfully, and the hands on his shadow reached for her basket. Nimbly, they removed 1 cabbage, 1 artichoke, and 1 onion, and put them into the giant's mouth, after which he wandered on upstream, leaving the woman's path clear. So he stole 3 of the necessary vegetables that she needed to pay the will-o'-the-wisp debt to the river and the ferryman. She wondered whether she should turn back and replace the missing vegetables from her garden, and walked on, beset by this doubt. Soon she had reached the back of the river. There she sat for a long time, waiting for the ferryman, and saw him at last, ferrying a strange traveler across. A young, noble, very handsome man got out of the boat. The woman couldn't take her eyes off him. And so this is the prince whose spirit has been killed by his consort, the beautiful Lily. So something has gone wrong in their relationship, in the way that they relate to each other, and he's wounded and wandering around in a kind of zombie-like state. Of course, he's come from the other side, from the other world. What have you got there? The old man called out. This is the ferryman. The vegetables that the will-o'-the-wisps owe you, the woman replied, showing him what she had. When the old man found only 2 of each kind, he was annoyed and assured her that he could not accept them. The woman begged him to take them, explaining that she could not go home again now, and that the basket would be too heavy for her on the way she still had to go. But he stuck to his refusal and explained that it didn't even depend on him. Whatever I have coming to me, he explained, must be left together for 9 hours, and I can't take any of it until I have given the river a third. After much discussion, the old man finally declared, "We have one more possibility. If you want to give the river a guarantee and acknowledge the fact that you are its debtor, I'll accept the 6 pieces, but it's dangerous." "If I keep my word, what can be dangerous about it?" "Nothing at all," said the old man. "So put your hand in the river and promise to pay your debt in the next 24 hours. The old woman did, and was startled when she drew her hand out of the water coal black. She scolded the old man, pointing out that her hands had always been the most beautiful part of her. In spite of hard work, she had known how to keep the pretty things white and dainty. She looked at her black hand with chagrin, and cried out in her despair, "But that isn't all. It's much worse. My hand is shrunk. Now it's smaller than the other." "It only looks that way," said the old man. "But if you don't keep your promise, it may come to pass your hand will slowly dwindle, and in the end disappear entirely. But you won't lose the use of it. You will be able to do anything you wish with it, only no one will be able to see it." "I'd rather be able to do nothing with it, if only no one can see that anything is wrong," said the old woman. "But it doesn't really matter. I shall keep my word and rid myself of my black hand and all this vexation." Quickly she picked up her basket, which now rose above the parting in her hair and hovered freely over her head. Then she hurried after the young man, who was walking slowly along the river's edge, deep in thought. His marvelous figure and strange attire had made a deep impression on her. His chest was covered with a coat of mail, under which every part of his magnificent body moved freely, and a purple cloak hung from his shoulders. And it's interesting that he's wearing a purple cloak. He has come from the other world, the spiritual world, and the color purple and or indigo and violet, the top colors of the chakras are blue at the level of the throat, the Vishuddha chakra, indigo between the eyes, which is the Agya chakra, and then violet or purple at the top. So these are very spiritual colors. Rudolf Steiner points this out in his commentary to this, and he says, if you look at the lower colors, the red, yellow, and orange, which are the colors of the lower 3 animalistic chakras, he says, the color red seems to attack you. It's a very aggressive color because Muladhara energies are the energies of anger, lust, pride. All the 7 deadly sins are the Muladhara chakra motivations. They're very red. They're red ray energy, low vibrational. And they have to be transubstantiated by the middle chakra, which is green. And the serpent is green. Keep that in mind. The middle chakra, the heart chakra, is the chakra of love and compassion. And it transforms the energies of the lower chakras into the higher vibrational frequencies of the bluish chakras, which have blue, soothing colors. Notice that most of the colors are very, in this painting, and then most of them are of the upper chakras, blue, purple, and indigo, and so forth. The talkative old woman tried to draw him into a conversation, but in curt replies, he gave her little information. In the end, in spite of his beautiful eyes, she grew tired of constantly addressing him in vain. She took leave of him, saying, "I am afraid you walk too slowly for me, sir. I must not miss the moment to pass across the river on the green serpent and bring my husband's wonderful present to the beautiful Lily." And I think that I've sort of given away what everything is going on here, that the serpent represents the green heart chakra of love that carries you across to the upper chakras, which have nothing to do with the animalistic passions and desires of the lower three chakras, which represent the astral body, the animal aspect of us. Whereas the upper three chakras, and these of course are the three kings, who are sunken down below, they need to be brought up. Their temple will raise up. And that is the raising of the upper three chakra energies, what Rudolf Steiner called the energies of the life spirit, or rather the spirit self, the life spirit, and the spirit body. These have to unfold through doing work on yourself, on your astral body, and the ego must gain possession over the passions and desires of the astral body, and in doing that, it transforms the lower chakras into the upper chakras and constructs the properly spiritual nature of the human being that animals simply do not possess. All right, so we'll stop here for this installment of this video. This is also in a way sort of an advertisement for, I have a class coming up that we're going to do for my school on November 18th called Understanding the Hermetic Tradition. And this story will be one of the stories that we will be analyzing, along with what we will study alchemy, Kabbalah, the tarot, and we will read The Chemical Wedding of Christian Rosenkreutz. We'll discuss this one, and we'll also go through understanding Kundalini Yoga along with all of that. So that will be, it's coming up. Watch for the video advertisement of it, which will be up tomorrow or the next day.